Hi everyone, so this is a video looking at how to use the sine rule. Okay, so this is a type of trigonometry. The trigonometry that we've already looked at is where we would be looking at it using a right angle triangle. But this time it's not using a right angle triangle. So we've got a scalene triangle, okay, and the key is to notice what's here and what you're given and what you need to find out. And that's what indicates using the sine rule, okay? So what I can see is I've got two sides and two angles, okay? So two sides and two angles always indicates the sine rule, okay? You might be working out a side or you might be working out an angle like we are in this one, but there are always two angles and two sides, and they're always related. Okay, so this is the sine rule. So it's A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. Okay, now we don't usually see two equal signs, which is absolutely fine, and we're not going to use all three parts because these little a's relate to the sides on the triangle, and these big A's relate, these big letters, relate to the corners, okay, or the angles, I suppose. So you don't need to use all three parts. We're only ever going to use two, but we have to choose which two we're going to use, okay? So the first thing to do is to label our sides with little a, little b, and little c. Okay, so it always works that it's opposite. So this is capital A over here, so this is going to be little a. This is capital B, so this is little b. This is capital C, so this is little c. Okay, the one that we don't need in this case, we need A because it tells us stuff. We need C, that's the one we're going to work out, so we don't need B. Okay, so we're going to be using A over sine A equals B over sine B. Okay, so all we do now is we substitute in what we know, right? So we know A is 10, and we know that sine A, so this one here, this angle, is sine 52. So remember, this is the same as the rules with trigonometry when we've used SOHCAHTOA, that the angle size always links with sine, cos, or tan. Okay, so in this case, sine. Okay, sorry, did that wrong. That was C and C there. Okay, so C is the one we're trying to work out, and we're dividing it by sine 77. Okay, so what we have to do now is we have to get this missing side on its own, and it's really easy because what we would do to both sides, and this is something you should already know, is we multiply by sine 77. Okay, to get rid of that bit there. So what I'm left with is 10 over sine 52 multiplied by sine 77 is equal to what we're working out. So the next part is to just put this into my calculator and work it out. So I've got a fraction first of all, so I'm going to use my fraction button. 10 over sine 52, I'm going to close my brackets, and then I move it up here so the cursor goes big, and I multiply it by sine 77. And I get my answer. So the missing side on this triangle is 12.36 centimetres to 2 dp. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at how you would find a missing angle using the sine rule. Okay, so we're going to start off exactly the same. Let's label our sides with little a, little b, and little c, so opposites. So this one would be A, this one would be B, and this one would be C. So if we've got our sine rule, we've got A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. Okay, the one we don't need is C this time, so we can cross that out. So we're left with A over sine A equals B over sine B. Okay, so let's fill in the information that we know. So we know A is 10, and we've got sine 68, okay, equals B, which is 9, over sine. Well, that's the one that we're working out, isn't it? Okay. What's difficult about this one now is that this is underneath, okay? And it's complicated because we've got a fraction here, okay? So what we're allowed to do, which is great about the sine rule, okay, is that we're allowed to flip the fractions over. Now this is because what we're actually doing is these are actually switching places. So we're doing 9 divided by all of that, okay, which can be quite complicated. So what we're allowed to do is we can flip the equations, okay? So we're allowed to write it as sine 68 over 10 equals sine of what we're trying to work out divided by 9. We're allowed to do that, okay, which is really nice in the sine rule. Okay, so now what do we need to do? Right, well, I need to get rid of this 9. So I'm going to times each side by 9. So let's get rid of that. So what I have is sine 68 over 10 times 9 equals sine of the question mark. Okay, I'm not going to work this bit out yet. I've got one last thing I want to do, and we'll do it all in one go in the calculator. I need to get this question mark on its own. So what I'm in theory doing is I'm dividing each side by sine. But what you have to remember is what that actually does to this side. And if you think back to how you work out a missing angle in SOHCAHTOA, okay, you would put sine cos tan to the -1. And that's what that is. It's the inverse of sine, okay? So we're going to work out sine to the -1 of all of this. Okay, so that's going to equal a question mark. So we're just going to put it all in the calculator in one go. So shift sine, my fraction button, sine 68, close brackets, divided by 10, multiplied by 9, close my brackets, and it gives me the answer of 56.56 degrees. Remember, we're working out an angle, and I've rounded it to 2 dp. Okay, so I want you to now have a go at some questions on your own.